All right, guys. So another thing that we did that was actually still a review, but we tried to run the server, and we can do that by first you want to activate the virtual environment. So you want to say source my venv. Well, let me see where I am. Let's say pwd, or let's say list. Okay, so I'm actually inside this folder because you can see I have all those kind of stuff here. So I'm inside this folder. So let me go up once and let me do source my venv bin activate. So right now I have my active environment here, and then I can go inside this folder again. So cd Django project, and I can do Python manage.py run server. So that will actually run the server. Here in my case, again, I have other sites that are running right now. So let me stop them. It says that it's in use. In your case, it shouldn't be. So I just stopped the other site. Let's see. Okay. So if you click here, the site will open, and that's what you're going to see. Nothing kind of interesting, but it says Django is working. Okay. So we did also that. So now what I want to do is I want to essentially configure PyCharm, because right now PyCharm doesn't know that this is a Django project. It really doesn't. It thinks it's just folders that have Python files, and you can see that it colors them because this is Python, but it doesn't really know that this is a Django project. And when you let Python know that this is a Django project, it'll actually be easier to do things. So it'll allow you to kind of create things, do things easily, because it'll help you out, right? Once it knows that it's a for example, running the server can be by clicking here, play. So instead of kind of doing run server like this, which I actually never do, instead of doing this, you can hit play and the server will run. But for that to work, we have to let Python know that this is a Django project. So the first thing that we have to do is we have to let this project know where the virtual environment for this project is. So again, we created this virtual environment, but for PyCharm doesn't know that this Django project is going to be using this virtual environment. I mean, it could guess, but it doesn't really know because we've never kind of explicitly defined that. So for you to do that, you want to go to PyCharm preferences. That's what you want to do. Let me see what you would see there. Okay. So if you open preferences, that's what you're going to be seeing, this page. And you can look for interpreter. So here you can look for interpreter. Let me see. I'm going to search for interpreter. All right. So if you search for interpreter, this one will be found, and you can click here, and then you want to click on the settings. So this icon is for the settings. So let's do that. And when you do this, there's an add button. Notice something here. Let me actually show you that. And so here, again, I search for interpreter, and then I want to click on the settings file, and I want to click add. And now notice that PyCharm is going to tell me which virtual environment do you want to use. Do you want to use a new one, or do you want to use an existing one, which happens to be inside your folder? So it kind of guessed that this is the one that most likely I'll be using because it's inside the folder that I opened. And you just simply say, yes, I want to use the existing one. And it's the one that's here. Essentially, this one, if you kind of look at all of that, this path is the same as the path of my project. So I'm going to use this existing environment. I'm going to click OK. And I'm going to just do apply and OK. So that's the first step that we needed to do. So that's the command that connects to the server, which again, we're not going to be using it after a few minutes, because once we configure Python, we can just hit play and that will run the server. Okay, guys, so essentially I
That's
added
easy
the,
because that shit was $7. No,
so you wanna,
go that way.
all right, so I had to kind of mute that student. Make sure that your mics are muted, guys. Okay, so that's, do you have any questions about this? I just simply kind of went to PyCharm, preferences, looked for interpreter, you know, did this add, and I selected the one for existing, which actually right now I don't want to do it because I've done that. But essentially, once you click on existing, it'll point you to the, you know, to the one that you have in your folder. Okay, so that's it. I'm done with that. Now, after you do this, you want to go to add configuration here. And you want to tell PyCharm that it's a Django project. So the first thing that we did is we connected this project to this virtual environment. And one thing that happens, by the way, when you do this, I'll show you. I'm going to actually stop the server by doing Control C. And I'm going to just kind of deactivate. And I'm going to just close this project. And I'm going to open it again. And you notice that when I open it again, excuse me, hopefully it'll activate the virtual environment for me. I think that's what will happen because it knows where the virtual environment is for that project. It'll activate it for you. Let's see. Okay, you see, I don't think, let's see. Do you see, guys, now what happened? I just closed it and opened it, and it actually activated the virtual environment for me automatically. So I didn't have to activate it because, again, I went to kind of settings, and I told PyCharm that this project is connected to this virtual environment. All right, do you guys have any questions about any of that? Is that clear? Give me a reaction. You don't have to kind of follow along, but if it's clear, you can do it after class. All right, so that's good. Let's continue. So it seems that all of that's clear. Let's continue. So I'm going to go to add configuration, and I'm going to tell PyCharm that it's a Django project. So you can do that from this plus, and you can say it's a Django server. So just by doing here, going here and doing Django server. So essentially you're saying that this is a Django project. And you actually, when you do this, it'll give you the Python interpreter, which is the one that we picked. So you don't have to change actually this one. But the thing that you have to do is there's this thing that you have to fix. It says, if you want to enable Django support, you have to do something. So I'm going to click on fix here. And you have to do two things. You have to specify the root folder of your project and the settings file. So that's quick. So I'm just going to enable, and I'm going to specify the root. So the root, of course, guys, just to make sure that we're all on the same page, this is the root. This Django project, this one is the root for my project. It's not this one. This one contains the virtual environment and the project, but this one is the folder that essentially is my project, my Django project. So that's the root. So I'm gonna go here, do that again, do Django server, go to fix and enable. And here I'm gonna pick that folder. Let me do that. All right. So I picked that folder. And then I want to pick the settings file, which happens to be, of course, inside kind of my project. So again, for my Django project, I actually went inside this big project, and right now I selected this project. I just did this. You can navigate to it, and you can select this Django project. And for the settings file, you want to go inside this one. There's another folder with the same name that contains the settings.py. So you can also navigate for the settings file. And you can just say apply, okay. And essentially that's it for now. You can just say apply, okay. And it'll take a few seconds to kind of configure things. Again, the settings file, guys, is going to be here. So the settings file is inside this folder, which happens to be inside this folder. So inside your Django project folder, you usually have another folder with the same name that contains kind of some kind of project kind of at the project level, files for the project. So these files are for the project, not just kind of an app. So these files are used by all apps. So that's the settings file. You just kind of point to that one. And that's it. And now you can actually hit play. And if you hit play, it'll run the server for you. And you can click here and the page will open and the site will work, okay? Do you guys have any questions about this? Okay, guys. So that's good. So that seems to be, I mean, if you don't have any questions, then we can continue. One thing that we have to do is we need to connect our project to the database. And let me make something very clear here, because for some of you, maybe it's not going to make a lot of sense, but try to kind of pay attention to what I'm about to say. And if you have any questions, you can ask me. If you have questions about if yours is not working, we can talk about that after class. Again, it'll be hard to kind of troubleshoot each student. Loy, did you have a question about kind of setting up yours?
Oh no, I was gonna say I was actually good for now.
Okay, all right. So if you're having, Colin, what's your question? You're saying I can't seem to get mine to work, but is there a reason? Yeah, so if you click, so maybe you did configure something wrong. So if you do things right, this play should actually, should run the server. Okay, so again, we can talk after. You can watch the videos again if you need to. We did two things. We went to preferences and we also kind of changed the configurations here. Okay, guys. So I'm going to connect the database. I'm going to connect my Heroku remote Postgres database to my project. Now, one thing that I can do is I can add the database here. I could, but that's not going to be connecting the database to my Django project. Okay, guys. So if I add my Postgres here, just like what I did before, then I can kind of see it. I can visualize it. I can edit and change here, but that doesn't connect it to my Django project. If I want to connect a database to my Django project, I have to go to my settings file. And there's a database section here, databases, and I have to update this information. So again, if you want to connect a database to your Django project, you actually have to do that in this section in the settings file. So I'm going to show you how you can do that. And I'll do it. I'll also do it, but I don't want to show you my credentials, because I think every time I show you the credentials, I'm going to have to kind of delete the database and create a new one. So that's not very convenient for me. Because of that, I'm not going to show you the actual values, but I'll show you something here. If you give me just 1 second, I'm going to copy something here. Right, let's do that. Okay, let me resume here. Okay, so your database has to look like this. So we actually, it used to be like this. That's by default, but I'm going to change it to this. And it's actually pretty kind of straightforward. I mean, you can just pause the video and write all of that stuff. Of course, the name has to have the name of the database. So this is really the name kind of your database, which you're going to have to copy from Heroku. This one's going to be the username of the password of the database. And that's going to be the password, of the database. And that's going to be the host of the database. All of that information is in Heroku. And now this one, you can keep it like this for now. So if you go to Heroku, and I can do that with you without, again, sharing my credentials. I think it would be nice if there was a keyboard shortcut for like pausing the share. I'm going to actually look that up. If there's a keyboard shortcut for pausing the share so that I can keep kind of pausing the share and resuming the share, that would be actually pretty useful for me, because again, I don't want to show you everything. Otherwise, I'm going to have to edit those videos and that will be too much time. Okay, let's see. I'm going to open the project. Okay. All right, now I can resume. Okay, guys, so I just opened the Heroku and I opened this app, which is really the app that we created a few weeks ago, maybe 2-3 weeks ago. And I want to go to resources, and this is the database that I added. And if you go here, yes, if you go here, there will be settings, I believe. Here's settings, and you can view credentials. So if you view credentials, you actually would see all the values here. You would see the name of the database, the user, the password, the host, and we can add all of that. And of course, we can add that information to here as well. We can add a new data source. We've done that before, and we can go to Postgres and we can add all the information here. But again, by doing that, by adding a data source here, that doesn't connect the Postgres to the project. For you to connect the Postgres to the project, you have to put the information here. Is that clear, guys? Give me a reaction. So again, if you want your Django to connect to a database, you have to change the settings file. But if you want to visualize your database kind of using a GUI, then you can add it here. You can do one or two or both things. Usually I do both because I like to visualize the database using this GUI. And of course, I have to connect a database to my Django, so I have to kind of update this. Sweat, you have a question? Oh, okay, so the engine. So Sweat's asking about the engine. Yes, that will be the same if you're using Postgres. And I'm going to assume that you're using Postgres. You're using kind of Heroku's Postgres. So that'll be the same. Here you essentially you specify what kind of backend the database is. It has to be relational, by the way. In Django, it has to be relational. So they're all kind of, again, similar, but it's going to be either MySQL, Microsoft SQL, Postgres, and there's one called SQLite, which is actually the default. But we're going to use Postgres, and the engine is that. So that's what you want to write. Okay, guys, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to actually add a data source, and I'm going to copy the stuff and paste them. But I probably should pause the sharing now so that I can add all that stuff. Let me do that. Let me pause the sharing and let me add the credentials, and then I'll resume. I'm pausing the sharing. I'm copying the password. Actually, you wouldn't see the password anyway because it's, it's replaced with stars. I'm copying the database. I also need to copy the host. I don't think you're seeing anything. It's paused, and I'm going to test the connection. It did not like it. Of course, I have to remove that kind of annoying space. Let me try again. Okay, so it worked. So I'm going to resume the sharing just to show you what I did. Okay, guys, so I connected the database through the GUI. And as you can see, I have kind of a phone number. These are things that we created before. Kind of restaurant, student, quiz, all of that are stuff that I created either for your section or for the other section. So now, again, I want to use the credentials to update my settings file. So I'm just going to copy paste stuff here. Let me do that. I'm going to pause the sharing again. Once I do that, I'll see if you guys have any questions. I'll open it for questions if you have any questions. Again, you don't have to do that. You don't have to follow along. You can do that after class. So the only thing that you want to keep in mind is name. Actually, if you go to Heroku, you don't see name, you see database. And database is really database name. So you want to get the database and you want to put it in name. All right, so I need to copy the host and that's pretty much it. Okay, so I did that and I'm going to close my settings file and I'm going to resume the sharing. All right, guys, so I kind of updated the credentials in the settings file. Yep, so right now the database should be connected to my Django project. Let me see, do you guys have any questions? Okay, guys. So it doesn't seem that you have questions. I'm gonna right now talk about a new command, few commands that will do some kind of very specific things for the database in our project. So right now you see installed apps. Now those apps are actually there by default and you can keep them, usually I keep them, and we added main. Now those apps are actually should have tables. So those apps, so usually each app is going to have its own kind of data model. So its own kind of tables. For example, if you have an app for registration, then maybe you'll have the users stored in there. If you have an app for quiz, then you'll have maybe the students' answers there. So each app kind of defines its own tables, and we're going to define some tables for main. We haven't really done that. Our main is pretty much empty. I mean, there are kind of files, but these are just template files. We don't have anything here in the main. But for those apps that already come with kind of all projects, they actually do have tables, and they're defined. They've been defined before. Now, there is something here that you need to know. We connected the database to this Django project. However, those tables that have been defined here were not created yet. And there's this thing called syncing. It's kind of essentially, you know what syncing means. And syncing essentially in Django, it makes sure that the tables that you've defined here inside your installed apps match or sync with your database that you connected in the settings file. Now, we haven't done any syncing, but we'd like to do that now. So right now, after I created my connection between Django and this database, I'd like to kind of sync. I'd like to make sure that they're in sync. And what that does is that's going to look at all the tables that are defined in those apps. And it's going to make sure that those tables are created in my database. So I'm going to do that from the terminal. Here's my terminal. And of course, we know that we can Python manage one server. Again, we don't need to do that because we can just hit play and that'll do that. There's another command called manage.py, kind of Python manage.py, make migrations. So make migrations is gonna essentially look at the tables that are again defined here, and it'll say, did I create those before? And if Django hasn't, it'll ask itself, Django, did I create kind of those tables before? And if it hasn't, then it would kind of prepare the creation of those tables. And then there's another command that will create those tables. So you do make migrations. Okay, so that's good. We're getting some errors. And I like that because you're going to probably get those errors. And right now we can talk about fixing them. So when I'm going to scroll very slowly here. Again, I don't want to. Okay, here. When you specify the engine here, when you specify this, when you specify this engine, you have to have actually a package in Python that will allow you to kind of use this Postgres kind of database. And that's a module called this one, PSY COPG2. So we can install it. Again, we are in the active virtual environment, so you can simply pip install. We can try to install it. Let's do that. Let's see. Now notice here that it didn't like that. And again, all of that is good because some of you might have the same problems, but it gives us a suggestion. So it says, please install this one, the binary of this one instead. And we can do that. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to say pip install this one, the binary. And you can see it actually should work. And right now, if you do make migrations, it should work. So let's see. Let's go back. Here's make migrations. Okay, it's actually working. So that's the first step, make migrations. Then you do Python manage.py migrate. So it's really two commands. So to update your database based on your apps, you have to do Python manage.py make migrations, Python manage.py migrate. These two commands will update your database. So I'm going to do the migrate here. And you can see it's actually creating some tables. And if you come here, and if you refresh this one, you notice that some tables were created. So those tables were created because we did make migrations migrate. And again, make migrations migrate is going to look at all the tables that are defined in those apps, and it'll make sure that the database that you've connected to this Django project have those tables. Do you guys have any questions about this? All right, so no questions. Okay, guys, so that's great. I'm glad. Britt is asking something. You went make migrations, then migrate. Yes, so it looks like this. Of course, you have to be in the active virtual environment, which I am here. You would do Python manage.py make migrations, Python manage.py migrate. And that'll actually, again, look at all the apps, and it'll create some tables, which actually we'll never use. So all of that are tables we're not going to use. We can actually, I mean, I could have actually gotten rid of all of that. That would have been okay, but that's fine. We can keep them. We can get rid of them later. For now, they're not going to hurt. So what I'm going to do next, I want to take a break, but I'll tell you what we're going to be doing after the break. After the break, I'm going to actually start defining tables in my main app, and then I'm going to make migrations migrate, and I'm going to see those tables being created in my database. So that's how you create tables in the object relational mapper. So again, in SQL, if you want to create a table, you would say create table, something here, and you would specify the columns and the data types of those columns. In the object relational mapper, you do it differently. And I'm going to show you how you can do that after the break. And once you kind of define some things, all you have to do is just make migrations migrate. And Django is going to look at kind of what I've written in kind of Python code, and it'll create the tables. So it'll translate some Python code to kind of SQL code, and it'll execute that. That's really what happens. Do you guys have any questions before we take a 15-minute break? All right, so let's take a 15-minute break, and let's reconnect at 12:45.